failed EU system of quotas does not work and is the cause of huge discards. That means that fishermen have to throw away fish that they caught that are already dead. Unlike most of the Westminster elite who wouldn't know a fishing boat from a yacht, I've had many jobs catching cod and eel in the freezing cold Baltic Sea. My family are fishermen in the southeastern Denmark, and my brother-in-law's family have lived off the sea for generations. My nephew, a Danish fisherman with a small fish business, wanted to bring his teenage son into the industry, like his father had done with him. But because of the destructive policies of the European Union, he has realized that there will be no future for his son. His visit to me in the European Parliament in Strasbourg the other week confirmed this. This is a disgrace caused by a politician, and the Brexit Party in Westminster will make sure the necessary changes are made and hopefully act as a catalyst for change across the rest of Europe. The world is in need for more fish. It is healthy and can be caught sustainably. The UK has huge resources in its waters and would have a big voice in the world of fishing, but only if we regain control of our waters. This control will mean we can help to regenerate our coastal communities, which are amongst the poorest in the country. So, look at Norway. Let's follow their successful example and take back control. Apart from wasting my time attending the Commission's fig leaf parliament in Brussels and Strasbourg, I still work as an NHS dentist 2 days a week. And one of the problems we face in dentistry is the need to tender for our own NHS contracts on a regular basis. And this is not only in dentistry. It happens in A&E departments and many other services in hospitals all over the country. Labour keeps talking about our NHS is not for sale, as if this would be a novel problem in any trade deal with the US. But the obsession with putting everything out to tender when awarding any public contract actually stems from EU directives and was set in motion under the previous Labour government. It is a cardinal rule of the EU that foreign companies should be able to bid for contracts in member states, including in public services such as the NHS. So the Labour Party needs to wake up and realise that much of the NHS has been for sale for years, and it was started by them. Their selective memory really is amazing. This is what happens at the moment. So let me tell you, Jeremy, if you don't want foreign companies to be able to win contracts in the NHS, there's only one way of doing it. You need a clean break Brexit. We all hope that we would have had exactly that, a clean break Brexit, by now. Me especially, as going to Brussels has only made me more determined that we need to leave. Let me tell you a short story, more Dracula than Snow White. On becoming an MEP in May, the EU sent me over 100 pages on how I could claim taxpayers' money for all sorts of things. I'm sure these will really cheer you up. Did you know that MEPs can claim foreign language classes and private health care? But best of all, not just for me, but for my whole family. In addition, I am given £4,000 every month for a local constituency office, which does not include staff salaries. That's on top of that. It only is for rent and office equipment and no receipts required. And when I asked how I could repay the unspent money back to the EU, I was told that there is no facility to repay the money. Rest assured, I'm keeping a tab, and monies unspent will be given to a UK registered charity in the Northwest. At least we'll get some of the wasted tax money back to the constituency. So when the people of the Northwest are trying to make ends meet, pay the rent and put food on the table during times of austerity, Brussels has definitely not felt the same pinch, and nor does it apply the same accounting principles that it imposes on the rest of us. Receipts? Never heard of them. The European Parliament is very proud of its green credentials, but when the next Lib Dem or Green tells you how the EU is vital to protect the environment, tell them about the 130 chauffeur-driven limos that are used to transport MEPs around within the city limits. The reason these limos are not electric is because every 4 weeks they have to drive the 270 miles from Brussels to Strasbourg and back to satisfy the French government and their insistence on there being 2 parliament buildings in 2 separate countries. And the limos can't be electric because there aren't enough charging points on the way. You couldn't make it off if you tried. And everybody is talking about how we need to protect the environment. But in the Brexit Party, we actually come up with practical and realistic ways of doing something about it. We are committed to planting hundreds of thousands of trees across the country to repopulate forest regions and thereby reduce the carbon dioxide levels in our country. A simple, extremely effective, natural way to protect our environment and the air we breathe, and it doesn't cost a fortune. But the European Parliament has just voted through the new budget of about 170 billion euros for next year. And that included a 22-fold increase in spending on EU defence. It took Parliament less than an hour to vote through hundreds of amendments, most of them increasing the budget, to end with 170 billion. And when I suggested in my allotted 1-minute speech to Parliament that maybe it would be good for them to lead by example by trying to save money by getting rid of the limos, it definitely didn't win me Popularity Prize of the Week. But let me just finish with this. We're all here because we had a referendum in 2016, and that referendum result has to be respected, and respected in its entirety. To quote the ex-Chief Rabbi Sachs, every one of us counts. Every one of us has a voice. You lose that, you lose everything, because then it becomes a game for the rich and powerful. Thank you very much. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Leanne Murray, who is the PPC, the prospective parliamentary candidate for the Brexit Party in Lancaster and Fleetwood. She lives in the constituency. She used to work in the NHS, and later she worked in the security industry. Leanne took me around Fleetwood. She knows everybody. She is really, really good as a PPC, and it's a great pleasure for me to introduce her to you now. Leanne.
Carlisle, I'm really humbled and honoured to be with you this evening. My name's Leanne Murray. I am honoured to be the parliamentary candidate in the most amazing place I live in Lancaster and Fleetwood, and I truly wouldn't live anywhere else. I am a mum of 2 boys who are rapidly turning into fine young men, and I am extremely proud to be married to a Marine veteran injured in a parachute accident some years ago. I have been the coordinator to the constituency for some time. When I got the call to be a candidate, the magnitude of what was to happen and the task at hand was immense. Having been a campaigner for many, many, many years, probably too many, I knew the work, the time, the commitment, and the change that it was going to be to our family life. My husband supported me and told me it is now time for me to support you to do the right thing for our country. In my constituency, we have Fleetwood with proud people, proud of who they are and where they live. A couple of months ago, as Henrik said, he came out to the northwest to meet the people of Fleetwood, and it was such a fabulous visit. We visited the docks, and what a truly upsetting sight it was. I stood there in utter silence as I remembered in my much younger days going to the docks. It had generations of families, mums filleting, young men following in their father's footsteps. That is truly no more. They now tell us their fish gets caught in their waters and returned to them by lorries from Norway to be filleted there. Little job opportunities now exist for our young. We desperately need change. The withdrawal agreement is not going to give us our waters back, and it's important for where we live that this becomes the case. There are many issues within my constituency, and that is why I joined the Brexit Party. The Conservatives and the Labour Party have let us down. They've taken our votes for granted for decades, and we truly need that to change. Our hospitals, our schools, and our industries have been left to disintegrate under their watch. It is only this party that can now deliver the change we need. This is not just about Brexit, ladies and gentlemen. Here in the north, people voted overwhelmingly to leave the European Union, and that is still very much the case. Here in Carlisle, you voted 60.1% to leave. Did Parliament listen? No. Instead, they have turned their back on democracy. They have turned their back on the biggest democratic mandate that they have ever had. Thank you. The events of the past 3.5 years have not only shown us how unfit the main political parties and their MPs are to govern our country, but it has also shown us the contempt that most MPs have for their constituents, like ours in Lancaster and Fleetwood. I am now making an appeal to all of you, to everyone in this room and who are watching it live online. Contact your PPCs, young and old. As PPCs, we need you. We need an army on the ground right now. There are many things you can do. PPCs need you. You, the people of Carlisle, deserve better. The people of Lancaster and Fleetwood deserve better. Our country deserves better. The political system within our country is broken and does not truly represent the will of the people. At the general election, we together can change politics for good and can build a bright future for our country. And that is why I'm standing as a Brexit Party candidate. Please be assured when you put that cross in the box, this is your voice. And we, the Brexit Party candidates, will make your voice heard. Before I close, I have a message for the two main parties. The North remembers, and winter is coming on December 12th.
Well done. Well done. Thank you very much, Leanne. Our next speaker is actually your own prospective parliamentary candidate from Carlisle. He's got strong working class roots here. He used to be a policeman in this city and a former soldier with the local regiment. So he's the guy you need to contact when you want to help with the Brexit Party. Ladies and gentlemen, John Blaylock.
Wow. I feel really proud to be here in Carlisle tonight. Be just and fear not, the Carlisle City motto. Those are two fantastic principles, fairness and courage. Principles that sum up our great border city and principles that I've always tried to apply to my own life. It's those principles that I had in my heart when I joined the King's Own Royal Border Regiment and volunteered to help protect the innocent citizens in Northern Ireland. Those are the principles that led me to join Cumbria Constabulary, to serve my local community and to do my utmost to keep our streets safe. And those are the principles that have brought me here today. Because I believe in fairness. And I believe that we all have a duty to do what's right. The time has come to set aside the doommongers and the naysayers, the people who stole our votes in 2017 when they made absolute promises to us, promises that they refused to keep. We've listened too long to these so-called liberal elites telling us that we didn't know what we were voting for and that we're too old and too stupid to understand. They're talking about us, the people of Carlisle, a city where more than 60% of our electorate, proud, hard-working people, voted to leave. A city that heard David Cameron make the leave choice perfectly clear when he told us during the referendum campaign. And I quote, "You have 2 years to negotiate. At the end of those 2 years, you are out and you have to operate under World Trade Organization rules." That is what we wanted. That is what we voted for. That is what we have a right to expect. And that is exactly what I want to deliver on our behalf. I'm standing for Parliament in Carlisle because I genuinely love Carlisle. And I think it's time that we had a full-time MP who's prepared to deliver a proper Brexit and to put Carlisle and the people of Carlisle first and foremost at every time. Ladies and gentlemen, be just and fear not. Vote for the Brexit Party and vote to change politics for good.
Well done. Thanks a lot. Okay, I'm not sure we got any more speakers now. Or maybe we got one more. I know we're just a warm-up act here. Our next speaker needs no introduction. He has done more for the cause of Brexit than anybody else. He has worked tirelessly for this for over 25 years. And he is the reason we are where we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Farage.
Day one, event one, here we are in Bolsover. Yep, I've been in the rings, not the first time I've been in the boxing ring. I've taken on Jean-Claude Juncker, Mr. Van Rompuy, and many, many others over the years. And of course, this time, we're taking on the entire establishment, and particularly here, the Labour Party, because they made a load of promises to people that the referendum result would be respected. They've now turned their backs on communities like this, and we're going to make sure in areas like this people have a real choice. And the only party that actually believes in Brexit is the Brexit Party. But anyway, I mustn't go on. I've got to get to Ashfield now. We're fighting an election campaign at the moment where Labour and Conservative are saying we'll spend this, we'll spend that. What we've got to start thinking about is how to create the money to spend. We're in Ashfield. I'm here with Martin Dalby, our PPC for the constituency. Proper fish and chips, gotta tell you. But if only the fish had been caught in British waters, I'll bet you every pound to a penny that fish was imported from Iceland or Norway, which kind of sums up why we need Brexit. Quick charter in Wetherspoons and off to the rally.
Welcome to the stage, Nigel Farage.
Well, good evening, Carlisle. What a great introduction. Nice to meet you. There we are. I got to say, it's been a fascinating day. You saw my first day yesterday was in the East Midlands. Today we've been in Cumbria. I had to come to Cumbria as quickly as I possibly could because this intellectual think tank, this intellectual conservative think tank in London has identified Workington Man. We found him. I came all this way. We found him. Can I say, I think the very idea of a London group of college kids saying, oh, we think those working class Labour voters in the north are all going to vote Conservative is utterly patronising, totally demeaning, and sums up the gap in this country between London and the rest of it. And I've come here to say that's how I feel on this issue. So, yep, we were in Workington doing an event like this morning. We then went to Whitehaven, had a wander around there. How sad to see a fantastic harbour like that. And okay, there's some nice yachts in there, some nice pleasure boats in there. I'll tell you what's not there, that used to be there, fishing boats, bringing income into that town, helping feed and look after families. And I, all the way through this Brexit debate, I always thought the absolute acid test of whether Brexit was delivered was whether we were going to get back our territorial waters and the fish that swim within them. And thus far, I have to say, our entire Westminster class have been utterly gutless. It's as if coastal communities don't matter. Well, I tell you what, to the Brexit Party, coastal communities do matter. We want our fish back. No question about that. And from there we stopped in Cockermouth, where I did have a couple of pints of Jennings. Anyway, because that seems sensible to me. And here we are tonight in Carlisle. And, you know, it's very interesting, isn't it? This county, 5 of the 6 constituencies in this county, made up of both Labour and Conservative voters, felt as I felt earlier this year, utterly hacked off at the sheer amount of lies and deceit we have had from Westminster ever since that joyous morning of June the 24th, 2016. And that's why I set up the Brexit Party. I could no longer, because I believed them. After the referendum, I actually believed they were going to deliver. I won't make that mistake again, will I? So I set the party up, and here in Cumbria, for a party that was less than 6 weeks old, we topped the polls in 5 of those 6 constituencies. So I think so to be told by Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's a friend, and I'm surprised, but to be told by Jacob the Brexit Party should simply pack up their tents and go home and trust the Conservative Party and Westminster to get on with this job. Do we trust them? No. Do we trust any of them? No. We've got to do it ourselves, and that is right. So I'm going to spend the next 5.5 weeks travelling the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. I've got 60 events like this already booked into the diary because there are 3 really big messages that I want to get out. And the first, and it's not being talked about enough, is about the Labour Party. Because remember, this Labour Party promised during the referendum, after the referendum, and in their election manifesto of 2017, they promised they would abide by the result of the referendum, they would respect the result of the referendum, and they would implement the result of the referendum. And now they have completely turned their backs on 5 million Labour voters who voted to leave, because now the Labour Party's policy now, anyone here know what the Labour Party's policy is? So, Diane Abbott, what have I done? Diane Abbott, that well-known mathematics professor, when she appeared on Question Time the other week with my friend Richard Tice, said that the Labour's, I can't do the impression, but said that the Labour Party's policy now was to win the election, negotiate a new deal in Brussels, then put that deal against Remain in a referendum to the British people and campaign against the deal they'd negotiated. I mean, you simply couldn't invent this stuff. Corbyn's position is this: they will give us a second referendum because the first time we got it wrong. Because, and my goodness me, when I hear this, it makes me mad. Perhaps it does you. They tell us we didn't know what we were voting for. How dare they patronize us and talk down to us like that as if we're a bunch of cretins? We knew what we voted for. We voted to become an independent, self-governing, proud nation that determines its own future. So they have actually betrayed Labour voters, and nobody who believes that leaving is the right thing for our nation, who believes that leaving is the right thing for our democracy. Absolutely. You know, this Sunday in this county and all over our country, people will gather at many thousands of Remembrance Day ceremonies, remembering the extraordinary sacrifice made by those generations just only a few handful of years ago. And it was done for us to be free, done for us to be independent, done for us to be a democratic nation. And people like Corbyn and the Labour Party are destroying that very thing that our forebears fought for. So, that's my first mission, to make Labour voters aware around this country that they should vote Brexit Party if they believe in Brexit. And my second mission is, now look, Boris is, when he brings the, well, that's one word that gets used. But we'll try and rise above that here this evening. Because actually, I think the level of political discourse has got to a level where both sides just throw abuse at each other rather than arguments at each other. And for a civilized democracy to function, we need to recognize the fact that other people have different points of view. And I know I've landed one or two right hooks on European commissioners over the years. But we will try and keep this discourse civil, something the Liberal Democrats with their bollocks to Brexit slogan simply can't manage to do. Now, Boris inherited a tough position. You know, he'd taken over from not just the worst Prime Minister in living memory, but the worst Prime Minister in British history. I mean, she was useless. So it wasn't easy. The clock was running down to October the 31st. And he told us we were leaving on October the 31st, come what may, do or die. He even said he'd die in a ditch rather than extend. Well, that hasn't worked out. But the thing I'm really upset about is this. He came back from Brussels and said, I got a great new deal. And people, because of exhaustion with Brexit going on for year after year, they wanted to hear that. They wanted to hear that. And so he held the first Saturday sitting of Parliament for 37 years to try and get his so-called Great New Deal rammed through before anybody had even read it. I spoke to MPs who'd voted against Mrs. May's surrender. Nigel, we're going to vote for it. Isn't it great? I said, have you read the thing? And they hadn't. It was rather like a car salesman saying, got this second-hand motor for you, Gov. Lovely little runner. Shiny and bright, and the bonnet's all been polished up. And you're the buyer. You say, can I have a look under the bonnet? No, there's no time for that now, you know. Trust me. Trust me. It's going to be a great car. Well, luckily it didn't go through, because now we've got time to lift up the bonnet. Now we've got time to see what's underneath. And I think the actions today of two important EU figures actually sink Boris's claims below the waterline. The first is Michel Barnier. Now, Barnier has been their chief negotiator. He has run rings around our people. Indeed, I saw him in the coffee bar in Strasbourg a few months ago. I said, Michel, can we recruit you? We'd like you on our side. You're much better than our lot at doing this. Barnier said, he reiterated, there will not be a deal concluded with the European Union by the end of 2020. He has said it will take at least 3 years to negotiate a new trade agreement. And Boris tells us he'll get Brexit done. Indeed, Boris tells us it'll all be over by Christmas. Something that history teaches us we should be cautious of, perhaps, as a claim. This deal does not get Brexit done. The agony will go on for year after year. And the demands and the terms of that deal, of that trade deal, are that we continue the surrender of our fisheries, that we align in regulation on everything from employment policy to social policy to environmental policy and even taxation. So literally, he's trying to present us with, we will have left when everything from financial services to fisheries will be regulated and in line with what's passed in Europe, not what is passed in our Parliament. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, that is not Brexit. And I am not prepared, after 25 years of fighting for us to be free, to stand aside and see this sold down the river. I won't do it. It's as simple as that. I won't do it. And indeed, to that end, Jean-Claude Juncker was on the scene again today. Jean-Claude, whether it was before lunch or afterwards, I really don't know. But Juncker was asked about Boris's claims. And Juncker said, Northern Ireland stays in the customs union. The United Kingdom stays aligned to the rules of the single market. He said Boris's deal is actually the same as Mrs. May's deal. And this is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. We are signing up to an international treaty. We'll be stuck for years. I'm doing my best to get Boris to shift.
Did Boris get rid of the backstop?
Boris got rid of the backstop, which meant that Great Britain is not committed to being in the customs union. But the price of that, sir, was to put a border out there in the Irish Sea to divide up the United Kingdom, which will lead to consequences with Scotland and agony and argument for years to come. But what Juncker was saying today was, even though that had been done, they got us back with the political declaration by getting a promise that we will align. Now look, I have tried to put together over months, some of you may know, a Leave alliance. I've tried to work to get some senior Labour figures who believe in this, along with the Brexit Party, along with Boris's Conservatives, to work together to fight as a national coalition for Brexit. I have tried my best to do that because, much as I believe in these great people that I've got with me in the Brexit Party, much as I believe in our mission, I will always put country before party in the right circumstances. Absolutely. But if he intends to stick to this treaty, then we will fight them in every seat in this land, and we will give the British electorate a choice, because it's there, the menu's there. You can vote for the Liberal Democrats. Well, no, you can vote for the Liberal Democrats. I'm not saying you should vote for them, but you can vote Lib Dem to just cancel the whole thing. You can vote Labour to have a second referendum with a choice of Remain v Remain. You can vote for Boris, which says, don't you trust Boris up here? Gosh, that think tank got it all wrong, didn't they? You can vote for Boris's party, which is Brexit in name only, half in and half out, or you can vote for us. And we say, we've had enough of all this, extension after extension. On the 31st of January, we should leave with a clean break Brexit, and I'll make sure that choice is on every ballot paper. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have got time for a couple of questions. The first one is from Nicky from Workington. Nicky, are you here?
It's me. Can't keep a good man down.
Okay. Nicky is concerned that you're going to split the vote. Should I vote for the Brexit Party?
Well, look, you can't split the vote if we're the only people offering a genuine Brexit. You can't split that vote. And secondly, can I say this? That is said by people, commentators who should know better. They're saying that all the Brexit voters are Conservative, and therefore all the votes we get will come from Conservatives. Plenty of Conservatives will vote for us, but you know what? I actually think, just as when I led UKIP back in 2015, in 2015, of the 4 million votes UKIP got, we got more from Labour than we got from the Conservatives, and now there are 5 million homeless Labour voters out there who voted for Brexit. Don't listen to this negativity about splitting the vote. We're the only people offering a clean break Brexit, and we will hurt Labour as much as we hurt the Conservatives. In fact, frankly, given their dishonesty, I hope we hurt all of them electorally.
All right, next question is from Rick from Carlisle. Rick, you here? There we are. Rick, Nigel, what would you do if we win? I mean, I personally am going to have a huge drink. I don't know if Nigel is going to do that as well, but Nigel.
What a competition, dear boy. I'm there, although I couldn't beat Jean-Claude Juncker at that game, I've got to tell you. Look, let's be honest, we have a first-past-the-post electoral system that makes it very, very difficult to break through. You can break through. To do so in a big way is hard. We are not going to win this election, but what we are going to do is get a big vote. What we are going to do, I believe, is get enough MPs into Westminster to keep the government of the day honest on this and to act as a warning signal to the British public as to what's going on. I've been doing this in the European Parliament for the last 20 years, And actually, having that position was hugely useful to be able to tell people what the place actually was all about, because we'd had years of silence and years of not being told. The DUP, with 10 MPs, have held the balance of power in Westminster for the last 2 years. I believe the Brexit Party could achieve that same position. But can I go on to say that once we have got Brexit, once we're free, the one thing I believe we need, the thing I think has been exposed by all of this, is how flawed our current political system is. I think we need wholesale, substantial political reform in this country. We need a voting system that is much more reflective of what people feel in the country. We need the ability on major issues to have citizens' initiatives so that we can hold referendums, so we can choose on the big issues that affect our lives. But for that to work, we'll need a written constitution that says never again can we be lied to. We've got to put it into law that how we vote in a referendum must be legally binding. That, I think, is very, very important. And there's a whole list here, but one more thing if I can. Between Tony Blair and David Cameron, they put 600 of their friends into the House of Lords. It is used to buy off opposition. It sums up the sheer level of political corruption that exists in this country. It stinks, and I want us to abolish the House of Lords and replace it with an elected chamber.
Okay, next question is from Thomas from Carlisle. There you go, Thomas. I think actually it's for John, really. If the Brexit Party get elected, how will it benefit Cumbria?
Is this on? Yeah. I don't think anybody who's driven into Carlisle tonight needs me to tell you how bad our infrastructure is. We are the only party with a properly costed plan to invest in our regions. There's massive, massive neglect gone on over the last few decades, not just during austerity, but going back probably to the 1980s. The Northern Ring Road, or the Northern Bypass, I should say, that we've got is a joke, and that was decades overdue. The Southern Bypass, we're now being promised money for that, money that was promised, as I recall, 3-4 years ago, and we're still waiting. Perhaps it's coming, perhaps it's not. But I can tell you that the Brexit Party will invest in the regions, and Carlisle will benefit, and no longer will we see a situation where for every £100 that is spent on the infrastructure in London, we get a measly quid.
Yeah, and you may have noticed so far in this campaign, Jeremy Corbyn's going to splurge money on this, and Boris has got money for that, and no one's ever told you where any of it is actually coming from. Well, I tell you what, you're quite right. We have talked about investing in the rest. Part of that is physical infrastructure, but also technological infrastructure is crucial. Some of the younger people here in this room, many of them may want to become self-employed at some point in time. A lot more people are doing that in our country today. 5.5 million now self-employed sole traders out there in this country. And yet, huge areas of our country without broadband connectivity, huge areas where the mobile phone barely works, and we need to invest to bring us up to the 21st century. How are we going to pay for it? Well, we're not going to give Brussels £39 billion. We are not. We're not going to build HS2, which will cost 80 to 100 billion. And we're going to halve the foreign aid budget, much of which gets wasted and spent here.
Next question is from Dave from Carlisle. There we go, Dave. Nigel, say if we take Boris's deal, we won't be able to do deals with the world. How long would it hold us back?
Well, now, I've got a friend of mine in America. And I tell you what, whether you like Donald J. Trump or not, I do. But whether you like him or not, he does tell it straight. He does tell it as it is. And he knows that if Boris signs up to full regulatory alignment, that pretty much puts the kibosh on having a trade deal with the United States of America. He also knows, I can't think who's briefed him, honestly I can't, but he also knows that this next negotiation goes on, so it wouldn't even be possible to do anything until 2023, but the tighter we're bound by the EU's regulatory structure, the less likelihood is we can do deals with anybody. What this deal will do is lead to an argument that we should rejoin, because we'll find ourselves subject to all the rules without any say. It will be effectively taxation without representation. So I think, Boris can bluster away. I'll take that on. Yeah, Boris can bluster away, but the truth of it is we're tying ourselves far too... We voted, folks, to be free, didn't we? Isn't that what the vote was for? Now, Harold's sent us up a little billet-doux here, which I will read out. Could Nigel make it clear to the country as a whole that though he's not standing as an MP in this election, as anything could happen, he may still be needed in Brussels? Well, it's an interesting point, Harold. I am, without doubt, amongst my peers, the most unpopular MEP there's been in the history of the European Parliament. And I've often thought if the Brexit Party behaved badly enough, they might just kick us out. You never know. I had a difficult choice to make here. Someone said to me yesterday, but Nigel, if you're not going to stand, Theresa May stood in the last election, in Maidenhead, a safe Conservative seat where a pig's bladder on a stick could get elected if they said they were Conservative. And it's the same with Corbyn, isn't it? Islington. They're going to vote Labour anyway. I'm not in that position, so what I've chosen to do, rather than spending a lot of time in one constituency, I am going to, as I've done today in Cumbria and did yesterday in the East Midlands and will be doing in Wales on Friday and Saturday, and Hartlepool and Sedgefield on Monday, and then Cornwall, and it goes on. Good job, I like it really, isn't it? And I am going to be traversing the length and breadth of this country to make people know the truth about what the options are. And the more time I spend out on the road, the more of these people we can get elected to Westminster, and that is my job.
And can I just say to Harold, I really hope that Nigel is not needed in Brussels, because if he's in Brussels, then the rest of us have to be in Brussels. I really don't want to be there. All right, Taylor from Durham. There we go, sir. If the Brexit Party were to win a majority government, aside from Brexit, what are their priorities?
Well, look, I think, let's be honest, it's not going to happen first time round. But what are our priorities? As I said, number one, before we can do anything, we've got to cut this Gordian knot that is the Brexit debate, so we can start talking about other things. But number one, political reform is vital. We've got to get people's trust and faith back in our entire democratic and governing system. Number two is someone's got to stand up. I've mentioned it already. Someone's got to stand up for the 5.5 million people running their own businesses. They're the ones creating wealth, paying taxes. They're the ones employing people. All government cares about is big business. All government cares about is global business. What about people who work as computer programmers, run their own taxi service, whatever it is? They're the ones being burdened with regulation, tax, and they're the people that say wealth creation. I think is genuinely needed, a different approach in this country. The National Health Service is dear to everybody and vital to all families in the UK. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to announce this in the next week, Dr. David Bull will be our spokesman on the NHS. You know, he's been for 2 decades on Sky News as their health commentator. For those of a certain age, he was even presenting John Craven's News Round back in the 1970s. And David is an expert on the National Health Service. And here's the point. Just putting more money in isn't always the answer. What you've got to get is delivery for that money. And I think that's very, very important. So we'll look to implement that. And a personal one, and a very big one, and it's aimed at your age bracket, I think. I'm guessing your age, but you know. And it's this. The whole point of a good education system is that you teach people in the last couple of years of school and through university, you teach them critical thinking. You show them, here is a problem, and here are 2 potential solutions, and you make your mind up which of those you think is right. That is how education is supposed to work. Increasingly, particularly in our universities, young people are being taught, here's a problem, here's one solution which is virtuous and good, and you must support it, and here's another which is evil, bad, and wrong. And we cannot go on with our educational establishments not teaching critical thinking and giving a biased view to young people in this country. It needs to be tackled.
Okay, last question, but can I before that just make a short plug, because Claire Fox, and some of you might know, and myself, we are left-wingers, and we have actually used some EU money to produce a book which gives you the left-wing argument for national sovereignty and the left-wing argument for Brexit. And if any of you would be interested in having a copy of that book, it is free because it is paid for by the EU, then please come and talk to me afterwards and I'll give you the details, and then you can, then we'll send you one. All right? Last question is from Ken from Kent. There we are, Ken from Kent. Okay, Nigel, can you put something formal together for the Tories to formally reject?
Well, I'm going back to Kent tonight, actually. Hi, Ken. Are you on holiday or?
See my sister in Carlisle.
Very good. He's come to see his sister in Carlisle. Very sensible. Ken, look, I've said today that, you know, I hate the whole EU treaty, but if in a spirit of some compromise that might get us closer to a proper Brexit and not trap us for years to come, if Boris stood up and said, all right, I'm going to go back to Brussels, I'm going to remove the clause that says that our extension goes on to the end of 2022 or longer, and we're going to say, that's it, there's a sunset clause next year, that we will not go along with regulatory alignment, but we will talk about a trade deal, as Canada and others would do. That would be a huge step in the right direction. Now, the question is, Ken, would I then trust him? And I think the answer to that, given the track record, has to be no. But if we could engineer a deal whereby we guaranteed a good number of Brexit Party MPs in Parliament, he'd have to keep his promise then, wouldn't he? So I am prepared, you know, I am prepared to compromise. I am prepared to think about this, but we just must not allow ourselves to be trapped for years and years to come. And Henrik's point was a very good one a moment ago. You know, this issue about whether we're an independent, self-governing democracy, whether we control our borders, determine our future, you know, left-wing politics, right-wing politics is now out of the window. You are now either a leaver or a remainer, and we're leavers, and we are going to win, aren't we?
Okay, that's the end of the evening. Thank you very much for coming, all of you. And if any of you are thirsty, I'll meet you in the bar for a pint.